Welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. We're peeling back the wine business one bottle, one label, and one cork at a time, and sponsored by the Original Wine of the Month Club. Don't forget gift giving this holiday season. There's a gift for everyone on your list at the Original Wine of the Month Club. That's wineofthemonthclub.com. But we're going to go back. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go, frankly.
Well, you don't know how any of them are going to go. So, I mean, why would this be any different?
Actually, I kind of think I know it's going to go. But this is Ed Masciana, who you've probably heard many times on podcasts. Well, not the podcast, but on the videos. He's been hanging around Wine of the Month Club before. It was Wine of the Month Club, I think, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So, but Ed is an accomplished a Los Angeles wine guy, so to speak. He's the author of a book called Shortcuts of Wine. You've probably heard the book, When Music on Hold. Probably the best decision Bing, who's our old manager, ever made. Mm-hmm. She's like, why are you listening to music on hold when you can listen to Ed?
Excuse me, that was my idea.
Was it?
Yeah, that was my idea. I told her that. And a matter of fact, I tried to syndicate it and didn't get very far. But, you know. But,
and then you're going to call Muzak on me and tell him to shut me down.
No, seriously, I actually had contacted wine stores and told them I'd license them for like $5 a month to use it as background. You know,
so you know the guy, the original one I did was from Wine for Dummies.
Right.
Okay.
I remember that.
It was this,
yes, I know.
It was this New Jersey accented guy with this terrible wine accent. It was the worst accent for the wine business you could ever have, right? And he was reading the Wine for Dummies book. And I'm thinking to myself, no one's going to want to listen to this. And then you came along and you recorded two versions of this Shortcuts on Wine on tape, right?
No, just one version. It was on. Well, actually, no, you're right.
No, you updated it.
That's right. The first one was on cassette, and the second one I did digitally.
Because they're both. They're both actually. What happened was they're both on the tape. We didn't append. We appended the original. So if you listen long enough, you get to hear Ed forever, which is the most nauseating thought I've ever come across.
Well, you should try it on my part, because when I was recording it, you know how many times I had to listen to it? I mean, it drove me crazy.
So anyway, I want to go back to those days because one of my favorite things to tease you about is your career with Der Wienerschnitzel. Were you director of marketing or something?
I was director of public relations.
Oh, PR, yeah. Well, that makes sense. Okay, I get it now. So you're director of public relations for Der Wienerschnitzel, but what year was that approximately?
1977. I got hired the day Elvis Presley died.
You did that this morning with this other date. Of course, it's easy to remember because it was Pearl Harbor. Well, the day Elvis Presley died, you got hired by Der Wienerschnitzel.
I think it was like August 29th.
That must be in all the history books.
Absolutely, at least the ones that haven't been written yet.
But you weren't into wine then.
Of course, I was into wine then. Are you kidding?
77? Oh, yeah, that was well past the hang around.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was...
Okay, so we'll go back further. You're 60-something, you got hired by the Palos Verdes News.
1969, right out of college.
The Palos Verdes News as a what?
As an advertising salesperson. And PV Wines and Spirits was probably one of the first people that I was introduced to when I was touring with the sales manager.
Did my dad buy anything from you?
He had a regular ad running every week.
Oh, so you're responsible for his amazing growth success at the PV Liquor.
I didn't think of it that way, but since you brought it up, I'm buying it.
Okay, so you call my dad to see, he had the pharmacy then too as well.
Right.
In 1969, he bought that.
And he advertised the pharmacy as well.
Did he? They never forgave him in Palos Verdes for taking out Pete Vagilato's Greek burger counter. Ever. He goes out, they never forgave me.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that guy?
Yeah. Well, he was before my time, but I heard the stories, okay?
And he got sued. And my dad bought and sold 12 pharmacies in businesses. Mm-hmm. And he was sued only one time in that career, and that was by the guy who owned the tomato sauce who he claimed my dad stole.
Well, when you consider that he's basically in the medical business and you don't get sued for anything except tomato sauce,
Yeah,
I wouldn't bitch about that. That sounds like a first to me.
I'm sure my mother really appreciated the fact that he brought home a 5-gallon thing of tomato sauce to cook with. I'm sure that was a huge thing for him. All right, so you came into the wine shop to sell my dad some space in the local paper. And you were just learning about wine, or you had not started that yet?
I know. I actually started learning about wine. I had a friend of mine in college who kind of was into wine, and got me started in that vein. I think your dad really pushed the envelope a lot further. But it happened, there were about 2 or 3 people that influenced me, your dad being probably the most prominent one, because I saw him so often. You know, we became personal friends. And
he says hi, by the way. I told him you're coming in.
Good. Well, I'm going to give him a call because I want to celebrate our 50th anniversary together. And
he's going to be beside himself.
Anyway, you know, and because I was calling on him, and he saw that I had an interest in wine and was getting even more so, I would go to tastings with him. You know, I'd go to visit the wholesalers and whatnot. And then when he started the Wine of the Month Club in '72, I started writing the newsletter even then.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, by you know, back and forth. He would write one, I'd write one if he was busy. And then for a while, when he bought me a computer, he bought me a first Mac Plus in 1980.
And how's that thing doing? It's still working?
I think it's holding a door somewhere. And in 1986, so that I could write the newsletter and produce it on Ready, Set, Go.
Ready, Set, Go, yeah, which I still have. So I want to go back to the business a little bit, because now, of course, even the rules of tasting wine amongst the wholesalers has changed. You know, they used to have, now it's all the fall, so they're coming up again. Southern Young's, Epic, all these companies will have their big tastings where you can taste literally 1,000 wines if you're there long enough. But were they doing it like that back then?
Yeah, they were. There were just more of them. I mean, there were a lot of smaller guys, you know, small brokers and whatnot. But because the Wine of the Month Club was getting bigger and they were buying more of one wine, they would have private tastings. I remember going down into literally a basement that you couldn't stand up completely in at NDC with Marcel Henry, and tasting a bunch of their
Monsieur Henry, wait.
Monsieur Henry.
I remember him.
And tasting a bunch of wines, and that's when I had my first Chambertin Clos de Bez.
Wow.
I mean, and I wrote about it. It was in the newsletter. You know, I said, I'm starting to drink this wine, and they hadn't tasted it yet, and they say, no, don't. And I didn't hear them because I was drinking the stars.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, though. The business has changed so dramatically, because this company has grown and has had its peaks and valleys, and it's right now in a very congested environment. There's so many places, as you see, but it's an important point you just made. We still go to those tastings. We still, every Tuesday they're here. Tomorrow I have a full boat, probably going to taste 65 wines. We are still tasting everything that's coming into this country that we can, everything that's being made here in this country as we can. And we got to a point about 15 years ago where we were so big under the one club, the main club, that we were having trouble finding enough wine of the things we liked. Okay, and this is an important point, because we're going to get to some of this in a minute. But so we're buying about 2,000 cases, maybe 1,500 cases in that club's heyday, that particular segment's heyday, and all of a sudden I'm turning away some wines because they're really good, but there's not enough. Right. And it kind of leads me into this conversation we're going to talk about in a little bit about the congestion in this business. And there's some very, very large players like Wink and Naked Wines and all these other clubs, but they are so big that they almost, it's almost by the model difficult to find really good valued wines in the mainstream of how you and I taste wines, which is through the regular channels. So they go out and find these €1, 50,000 gallon bladders and bring them to the country. So this is I think an important feature of what we do here. So you're writing the newsletter for my dad. You're tasting wines with him. You guys start Les Amis de Vin together?
Well, it was his idea. He comes to me and says, "Look, there's this international wine tasting organization that's based in France, and they have an office in Washington D.C. And John Movius is the main chapter director for Los Angeles, and we were going to be our own chapter. And a guy named Brad Winch, who was in the education field, he was the first chapter director, and then he went on and did something else, and then I became the chapter director. And then when I went to work for Billboard magazine, I couldn't in Hollywood, I couldn't come here that often, so I started a chapter in Hollywood, and excuse me, and then little by little I was running other chapters as well.
But Les Amis de Vin,
yeah, the Friends of Wine,
a French organization, because there's still, like, the Chevaliers are still around, which is sort of Cloak and Dagger Burgundy group. But Les Amis de Vin was really dedicated to the education of the public in wine,
absolutely,
and tasting. And you would hold, I think I told you, we ran into Robert Mondavi's daughter, totally coincidentally in San Francisco at the New York airport at JFK. she was in a wheelchair, and my wife engaged her in a conversation. Turns out, this is very funny though. The woman goes, "Well, we're in the wine business." And my wife's like, "Oh, so are we? Yeah, we're at the original Wine of the Month Club." And she goes, "Oh, I'm Robert Mondavi's daughter."
Oh, that's funny.
But she says, she was talking about Les Amis d'Avent, and I said, "Wait a minute, my father, didn't Robert Mondavi come down and speak once or twice to the group, South Bay?" Or
Not that I recall. I remember that in one of our tastings we did the first showing of the first Robert Mondavi Reserve Cabernet, which was the 1974 vintage in '76. And
that was his first reserve.
That was the first reserve Cabernet. Before that, they used to have unfined and unfiltered, which was kind of their reserve designation, but they didn't call it a reserve until the '74 vintage.
I see. So I told her, I said, well, my editor wants to reinvigorate this Les Amis d'Avent, which I think in today's marketplace, with the way things are going on, that the story, the education of the background, the history of cars, wine, food, architecture, doesn't matter, is being sought after, because there's, particularly in the wine business, there's so much crap that has no history, that has no story to tell. I'm wondering if it's not a bad idea to look into the idea of Les Amis, resurrecting it.
Well, the interesting part of that, though, Paul, is the fact that, people are drinking less wine. The per capita consumption is going slightly down, which is freaking out everybody in the wine business. But there are still a lot of people. There's a lot more people than there were 30, 40, 50 years ago. So you still have interest. And as I tell people in the wine business, because everybody's depressed about sales, I said, look, it's a pendulum. It swings this way, then it swings the other way. The other thing is, wine's been around for 8,000 years. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to go away. People are not going to stop drinking wine. We're just kind of in a trough right now, and it's just going to come back up like it always does.
I know that you, in between gigs and things that you're doing, and you're a negociant of sorts, and that you have the Peralta family wine label and some other brands, and you stumble across some of the stuff that you bring to us, that you put in the marketplace and the wholesale side. But you've also spent a lot of time on the floor at many of the big retailers in Los Angeles.
Well, I used to. I don't do
that lately. So you get a feel for what people are doing and thinking and drinking. And I can't tell you, I'm sure for you, but you hang out with wine people, and you're a very fine chef. In fact, what are you working on a restaurant right now, right? You're doing something.
I'm looking at a few things, but everybody says, you don't want to do that, do you? You're too old for that, aren't you? I said, well, yeah, but I can direct,
Right. I'm good at direct. Yeah, you're good at directing.
I'm good at directing,
So you get a feel for what people are thinking, and for me, like just Friday night, we went to dinner at Brerer.
Spit it out. Easy for you to say.
But Braera. Okay?
Oh, God.
You spell it. You say it.
Forget it. I don't need to.
It's next to the LA Gun Club. And it's there's two restaurants there. There's one called Sixth and Mill, which is an incredible, like, rustic pizza, not Roman pizza, but rustic. And then next to it is a finer Italian restaurant. And we went there. And I'm with close friends, guys I know well. And they bring along a friend I'm not as close to. And most of the conversation is about wine. Do you find that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a fascinating subject. It's everybody that I meet at a party or somewhere else that are friends of friends, and they tell them I'm in the wine business, all of a sudden they want to talk to me.
Yeah, they want to talk.
They want to talk because it's interesting, because they don't know anything about wine and they think they should. And the first thing I tell them is, I don't know anything about wine either.
I don't.
Okay, it's too big a topic to discuss.
I was laughing when I told my dad that you were coming in. We were laughing because I told him the same story I just told you. Because 2 nights before that, we were at Mi Piace in Pasadena, a great Italian restaurant, and the group I was with, again, they're not only talking about wine, they're quoting the podcasts that we're doing with some of these people. They're actually coming up with the lines. They're telling me my wife doesn't like Syrah, because I mention this all the time. So the conversation is always that way. So I was telling my dad about that cartoon I have, which is, Ben Franklin comes to the door of a revolutionary timed bar, and they go, who goes there? He says, Ben Franklin, the father of invention. And then he goes, who goes there? It's Thomas Jefferson, the father of the country. Who goes there? George Washington, the first general of the country. And then he goes, who goes there? And he says, it's Willie the wine merchant. He goes, right on, Willie, come on in. The rest of you guys got any ID? Because Willie the wine merchant is always welcome to the party. But your group, your friends are wine people. You hang out with James and other people that like wine and food. So I just wondered, you always end up in this conversation. And I think that tells me regularly that people are looking for the conversation, to the story. Tell me about what I should be drinking, what should I be tasting. And I think it's moving away from, well, we're just going to buy, $3 wines on Groupon because there's no story there. That's not a story.
Well, no, but when I would, because I taught wine classes at UCLA for 10 years, and I took over your dad's teaching South Bay Adult School in 1984 at Maricosta High School. And I used to love to kid the students. They'd come in and I say, okay, how many of you think that in this class you're going to learn how to pick a bottle of wine off of a wine list or in a retail store? And they all raise their hand. I said, well, then you're going to have to leave because you're not going to learn that. Okay.
Not in this class, you ain't.
We aren't going to learn that, period. Okay. I mean,
well, why would you say that?
Because people want, they want crib notes. They want shortcuts, which is why I labeled it shortcuts on wine. There are none.
That's a good point.
There are none. You can't just say, okay.
So the book's worthless then.
Well, the book, yeah, right. Well, it is now because nobody reads books, but that's another story.
That's true.
Anyway, the problem is people want to have answers. Okay, they want to know what to buy. And I said, look, I can't tell you what to buy. Only you can tell you what to buy. And I use a line from my photography teacher 50 years ago, almost 50 years ago, great guys. And he said, your best teacher is a roll of film.
Yeah.
You go out, you shoot a roll of film, you take it back, you develop it, you see what mistakes you made, and you don't make them again.
Yeah. No, that's true, though.
Okay,
no, that's right on. In the wine business, it totally applies.
And with wine, it's like, okay, you go out, you buy a bottle of wine, you don't like it, you make notes, you realize what you don't like about it, what you do like about it, and that guides you,
Well, that's gonna lead into what we're talking. I asked Ed, by the way, from our listeners to come up with some numbers to figure out how you start a winery and whether it can be profitable or not. So we'll get into that in a second. But it's important. What you just said is really important because you need to taste. When it comes down to, this is what befuddles me. Even the degrees, the Somm degrees and the Master of Wine, all those degrees, they all come down to tasting and being able to be articulate about what you taste and making decisions otherwise. So if you don't taste any, if you don't get out there and just taste stuff and take the notes like you're talking about, it's almost impossible to figure out what's going on in this industry because there's just too many things to taste and too many places to go and too many opinions to hear without making your own opinion on something.
Absolutely.
Like that what we try to do here is send an example of what it is, right? So if it's Sonoma Cab or if it's Armenian Areni, that's what it's supposed to taste like. And if you don't like that, then guess what? Don't go into the store and say, hey, do you have any Armenian Areni? Because they're not going to taste any different, at least the good ones, right? I mean, that's what our job is.
Pretty much. That's true. I to a degree, that's true.
Okay, so now we move into the way that wine gets to America or every part of the world. It's somebody, this is the conversation you and I had with Molly Hill on their very first podcast, which was, somebody's going to plant the grapes. It's a natural product. It's a natural process. You water them, you don't, and you pick them, and you're going to pick them because you're not going to wait. The only time I have seen, I don't know, maybe you have more experience in this because you've been doing it longer, but I remember 2004 in Paso, they didn't even pick. There were so many grapes and so many tonnage to have that they just left. If you didn't have a contract to sell your grapes, you just didn't pick them because there's so many.
That happens because the costs are significant, and sometimes it's cheaper to do that. But you also got to be careful because a vine is a very touchy little girl, whatever they are. Okay, the fact is, if you could damage the vine, and if you have to replace that vine, that costs a lot of money.
That's true. That's true. So that's what we're going to talk about. So but if I did plant it and I did pick it and I did ferment it, now we have a few choices at that point. And this is when we're going to get into your numbers in a second. But you got the choice. You can bottle it yourself and put your brand on it. But you're only capable of selling so much into that brand, and that changes every year, up and down, whatever happens. If you become successful and you can't keep up with the demand, that's good for you. But most of the time, that's not the case. So once you bottle what you think you're going to use, you go and sell the rest of the juice off to somebody else, and they bottle it, blend it, whatever they want to do. I can't tell you how many times Wine of the Month Club has gotten some really premium juice. We can't use their brand, give it to some other brand name. We sell the wine as it is.
Right.
That comes now. the idea of that, let's say you're Ed Masciana, you're trying to find some wine for the Peralta family label. You get a hold of a bunch of samples from a couple of wineries up north, and you get to choose the quality you want.
Right.
You get to decide.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if you picked it and planted it yourself, then it's your estate bottling.
I wouldn't have any choice. I get what I get.
You get what you get,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You have to use it. So you have to be very cognizant from farm to bottle, so to speak, to make sure that wine is good.
Well,
All
that's
right.
true.
So do you pay a premium then for that juice that is being shopped around, which is, by the way, like
No,
90% of the world?
Just the opposite. You actually pay less because, and I'll tell you why. You know, Mother Nature controls how much grapes come out of your vineyard.
Right.
You know, and it's not the same every year. So if you've got a Chardonnay vineyard and you're selling 6,000 cases of Chardonnay, and then 1 year it produces 7. You know, you're not going to make 7,000 cases. You're going to make 6,000. You're going to sell the other 1,000.
Yes.
All right.
As juice or as bottles or whatever. Right?
But probably as juice because it's a lot cheaper to sell it as juice. If you sell your 6,000, you've made your money. You've made your profit. You've got your model. Hopefully, you got a model and you know what you're doing. So who cares how much you sell those other 1,000 cases for in bulk? Suppose you sell it for what it cost you.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any difference. But the difference between that price and the price for that original 6,000 is significant.
Big difference.
I mean, you get wines that you sell for half of what the wine that was originally made sells
That's true.
for, because they just want to get rid of it. It's not like, oh, we're just going to keep it until we sell it all. Yeah, that's great, except next year those vines are producing again. Where are you going to put that juice?
Okay, so that you just stumbled across something very important, and well, let's see. This is the 1970s. This is the 48th year or 47th year that this has been happening, and I don't think it was as prevalent in the beginning of the Wine of the Month as it has been in the last, let's say, 20 years. And that is, you're right. So you've got the 2015, you got the 2019 hang on the vine, you got the 2018 in the tank, and you got the 2017 on the floor in the warehouse. So you pick the 19, you got to move the 18 to the floor of the warehouse, get the 17 off the floor, and you got to get the 19 into the tank.
That's
right?
exactly how it's supposed to work.
And thank goodness, because I don't think I've been able to send my kids to college without that formula.
I understand that,
because that is the essence of the supply and demand of wine, which I'm going to say a lot of consumers obviously don't understand that because they're not in the business every day, and they don't probably understand that most of wine, I'm going to say well past 75% of it, is bought and sold that way. That most of it is not estate bottled. Most of it is bought and sold.
Oh, absolutely. No, without question.
And sometimes just grown for that purpose, which I want to clarify something. It doesn't mean that the wines aren't good. It just means that that's just there's not enough land there are a lot of farmers that just grow grapes. They don't have wineries.
That's right.
They sell the grapes, and that's what they do. And in fact, for some of the great brands that our listeners buy, it could be a very good chance that some of this stuff's not even made by them. Most of it's not made by them.
That's true. Okay. And if they don't have a market for their grapes, then they either leave them on the vine like they did in 2004 in Paso Robles, or they pay somebody to crush it for them and put it in tanks and hope they can sell it.
Okay, so I have a good friend of mine, cousin. He's my brother-in-law's brother-in-law. He has, 5 rows of 10 vines each in some little, I forgot the name of the town. It's in San Gabriel Valley or San Fernando Valley, and he sent me a picture 2 weeks ago of the clusters of Cab, and he is so excited that he found a custom crush guy in like Camarillo or something who came down for a very nominal fee, actually, for like $1,000. But let me just turn it around. It's not so nominal when you think about it.
Yeah.
As you already know. So he picks the grapes, and now he's crushing them, and it's going to be a field blend of Merlot and Cab, right? So we're going right into that technology. It's a field blend, boy, the first field blend from this thing. But this is what part fascinates me. He's so excited about this vintage of wine because it's his wine. He grew it. It's his grapes, and I think the fee's gonna be about $1,000 or maybe $1,500, and he's gonna get like 2.5 cases out of it. So I'm gonna say, this is an expensive proposition, right? So this is an expensive proposition to make wine, but there's something ethereal about it. There's something that is lighting this guy up to want to see what happens with this vintage. And, of course, it has everything against it, right? It's in a bad area. It's the first crop. It's all these different things that are going to make it, probably not that great. But regardless, there's some excitement about the grape and the
Paul,
making the wine.
I've been saying this till I'm blue in the face, and it bores me more.
You
than
kind of look
anybody
that
else.
way.
Yeah, well, there are two kinds of people in the wine business. There are people that are in the wine part of the wine business, and there are people that are in the business part of the wine business.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
Well, it's kind of like restaurants, though, right?
Well, exactly, except that, you know, they're both fraught with lots of danger, Will Robinson.
Yes. Well, no, it's kind of like there's a chef-centric restaurant, which has its own mode of operation, and there's a business-centric restaurant. So the chef-centric restaurant is run differently. And my daughter's working at one now, which, by the way, they just earned a Michelin star.
I heard that.
Yeah,
yes,
so
I did.
She's on the menu, so it's cool. Okay, so we're going back to the wine thing and the costs of this. I guess it's pretty parallel to the restaurant. I mean, do you think? And I even asked this question of Victoria Aslanian of Armas Wine on the podcast. If you haven't heard that one, it's really interesting because the wine business in Armenia is growing very rapidly. They've gone from 27 to 54 wineries, blah, 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 blah. But I said, okay, do you think already, with only 54 wineries in the country, that it's reached a point where that if you were to start from scratch, go buy some land, plant the grapes, irrigate it there, you have to irrigate there, build the facility, and start making wine, that it's already past the profitability stage, it's just done? And she's like, yeah, pretty much. Because her father spent probably $20 million on building this, planting this vineyard and building this facility.
Yeah, but he won't make that back in his lifetime.
He won't.
You know.
Right. So, talking to the mic, will you?
Thank you.
So, in America, that window, I mean, that formula to make a profitable wine business in the first generation, let's say, is done.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about when you're saying the formula, because there's a lot of ways to make wine. And, you know, one of the ways is right now in Lompoc, they call the Lompoc Wine Ghetto, which are cinder block buildings that a bunch of wineries, you know, are in, so they can share equipment, they can share technology, they can share grapes if they have to, and you can get into it relatively inexpensively. You know, I mean,
Get into making wine.
Making wine. If you're really that stupid and you've got to make some wine, then go ahead and rent a facility. If you,
Okay.
now, if you want to build, you know, a show place like Bill Foley and spend $12 million on it, that's a different story.
Well, you have to probably then you'd assume at that point there's generations to get your money back.
That's
I
true.
mean, the wineries in Napa and Sonoma now that are you know, cash cows, are profitable. A, they built a brand, and B, they're in the second or third generation already.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so
Or they're owned by a giant corporation.
but and that's happening too. But so you can in Lompoc, which is what's the appellation up there?
Well, it's in Santa Barbara County.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and it's about 20 miles from Buellton.
But even to build, so you're talking about a co-op where you sharing the building?
You could, but you know, you could just rent a cinder block building. You know, 1,200, 1,500 square feet.
And you do what with it?
Well, you buy equipment.
You buy equipment.
You buy grapes. You're not going to plant any grapes because, you know, I mean, that's a whole different world. And
so I suppose from the idea that you don't have to wait 5 years for the first vintage like you would if you planted, you can
Right.
make wine. You and I can make wine next year.
right.
Okay. So
I made wine in my garage. You know, I bought grapes. We had a friend.
Unfortunately, I've tasted that.
No, you haven't. Nobody tasted it. I made sure of that.
But so okay, but you've now rented this space. You've made a commitment on the rental. You've bought some equipment or rented some fermenting tanks. You've maybe gone to school to learn this, or you worked as a cellarette somewhere, and you're trying to figure out how to do this. And because I'm going from my own experience, when I bought grapes from Mendocino and trucked them down to where my license hangs, you know, I was into that wine for $20 a bottle by the time I got down here.
Oh, easy. Oh, yeah. No, I
Easily.
didn't say it was cheap. I just said you could do it.
Well, okay, now we get that clarified. So let's just take that for example. I'm in it at $20 to $22 with the oak aging, which was neutral oak, and I got the barrels for like $200 instead of $1,000, and you know some other things to keep the cost down. But now I have this wine, which I think I had a lot of compliments on this Merlot from it. It was really good.
Yeah, the
right?
human condition, very nice.
But
wine.
but for me to take the regular retail margin, which would be 50% of that $22 at 11, now I'm to 31, I can't sell it for $31.
No.
Because I'm competing against branded wines that are $31. And how do you get the brand out there? Answer that question, and you're worth it.
Yeah, if I could answer the question, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be in my palace somewhere. I mean, that's all there is to it.
So that's the rub, right? I mean, you just explained what would be probably the least expensive way to get started.
That's true, but you still have to be able to sell it. See, that's what people don't understand. You've got to sell it. How are you, and who are you going to sell it to? There's 4,000 wineries in California. When your dad opened the store in what, 66? Mm-hmm. There were 26 wineries
in California.
Okay, there were like 8 wineries in Napa. There was nothing anywhere. You could count them on 2 hands.
Licensing, like my license, is part of that 4,000, or is that just facilities?
Well, license.
Okay,
there are 4,000 licenses.
Right.
Okay, now that doesn't count people that just have vineyards, and they don't have a winery license. They have a vineyard license.
Yes.
Okay, so they can't make wine legally, but they can grow grapes and sell it. Of course, that's agriculture. That doesn't really fall into it's not liquor yet.
All right, let's pretend. Ed,
Paul,
hey, it's great. It's great that we've been friends all these years, and I want to start a winery with you because you're so knowledgeable. You're such a great guy that I can't imagine us not being partners in a venture like this. So we're going to sit down tonight at dinner, and we're going to hash out trying to start a winery, but no sense in starting out in Temecula, where we can't seem to get a foothold on any, not quality, but consistency. So we're going to go to Napa. So you and I are going to go to Napa, and we're going to try and find what would be the minimum acreage you think you needed to make enough wine to sell it. 10 acres?
Well, the first thing I would do is spend at least half the conversation trying to talk you out of it.
Okay.
That would be number one, okay?
No, Ed, this is you and me, man.
But Paul, how do you answer a question like that?
Well,
10
okay.
acres, okay? If you're going to buy 10 acres and plant grapes, okay, which...
Yeah, this is unplanted.
Yeah, okay.
This is, by the way, exercise because we're not doing it.
I understand
Okay,
that. Yes, believe me, I understand
Thank
that.
you.
There's a lot of ways now that you can make more. You can get more quality grapes out of an acre of land than you could 30 or 40 years ago.
Pick an average. Is that tonnage? 5 tons an acre?
You could get 6 tons an acre if you planted 5,000 vines instead of 500.
Yes.
Because now you're asking each vine to produce actually less grapes at 5,000 vines than 500, but your yield is going up. It's going to cost you a lot of money to farm that land. You can farm 500 plants for $2,000. Let's just stop right there. Already now we've had to decide how much land we're going to buy, and that's going to decide. In order to answer that question, we have to figure out how many vines we want to plant. And to answer that question, we have to know the spacing, because that's an important metric of being a vineyard owner. That's right.
Is how far apart the vines are from each other. And then now, based on that, we think we might work backwards and say, okay, if we're getting 5 tons an acre, and we have 10 acres, that's 50 tons of grapes.
Okay, that's 3,000 cases.
3,000 cases. Okay, for 3,000 cases out of thing. Now, 3,000 cases. If you've not done anything before,
wait a minute. Let's do that. Let's figure that out again.
It's 600 cases of an acre or something, right?
It's 60 cases to a ton, and we got 5,000.
30,000 cases?
Yeah, it's 30,000 cases.
30,000 cases, okay.
Yeah, it's 30,000 cases.
30,000 cases, and we have to wait 5 years because we just planted these vines.
Well, if we just planted them, we'll get something in 3. Maybe, a ton to the acre with the high density.
But if you're sort of working in the traditional methods of, let's say, the Bordeaux and Burgundy, those grapes don't go into much because
they don't see those until they're 12 years old.
Yeah. Okay. So you've planted these vineyards. You don't have a facility yet. You don't have a structure. You just, right now we spent, what would 10 acres in Napa cost us unplanted?
Oh God!
That's why I'm looking at your cheat sheet here.
Yeah, I've got. It's gonna cost
it's gotta
you
be $200,000 an acre or something.
Well, it wouldn't be quite that high, but it would be at probably $150,000
an acre.
An acre.
So we're into it $1.5 million.
That's right.
When we haven't planted anything.
That's correct.
Now, the last time I looked, when I had that 60 acres in Paso, and we were going to plant that 60 acres, by the way, just so the listeners know, the Wine of the Month Club was going to be in the manufacturing side of the business by planting grapes and making the wine. I think at that time, the planting of the grapes was going to be 5 times the cost per acre than the land.
Correct.
Acre. So, so whereas the land at that time was, let's say, 5,000 an acre. I know it's hard to believe, but the planting of it was like 25,000 an acre.
That's correct.
Okay? So the irrigation and all the rest of it.
That's right.
Point, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we bought the land for $1.5 million, and now you just said something important. If we want higher yields and we plant more because we know how to coax the vine into producing quality grapes, which, by the way, in the traditional sense of farming, right? You prune plants and reduced the yield
Correct.
to get higher quality.
That's right.
Right. And I mean, just even in your own little peach, I have peaches at our house. If we don't prune them, the peaches are watery and thin and acidic. Right?
It's called agriculture.
That's right. Okay. So we now think we know how to trellis a vine or canopy, meaning we shade the grapes and they get the maximum exposure, whatever we're trying to do. But this 10 acres. I don't even know what it cost today. It was $21,000 an acre to plant, and that was like $19.99. What do you think it costs to plant an acre these days?
It hasn't really gone up that much. The budwood is not that expensive. The labor is what's has gone up. You know, it would probably cost $30,000
an acre. Okay, so 30,000 acres, 10 acres, so $300,000. So we're almost into $2 million, and we haven't produced a single dollar. We haven't even made the wine yet.
But we're having fun.
Yeah.
We're telling our friends.
We're each other's throats, but we're having fun. So we're going to do it for a couple $1 million. 30,000 cases is enough to probably turn a profit. It's probably enough if you get the distribution, which is a large amount of wine to sell. Let me just benchmark that a second. When we talked to Alec Garaci from TGIC in this podcast, he brought in a container, his first container of Chilean wine into San Francisco, which is like shoot yourself in the head. But he did. It's only 1,200 cases, which is, what's that? You said 30,000 cases, right?
Right.
Okay. 1,200 cases. It took him a year to sell this 1,200 cases from scratch. Because why? He had no brand. He had no sales experience. He didn't have a distributor. He had none of the things that cost money in order to get the wines in the hands of the people, right? So that's only 1,200 cases it took me. So if you're 30,000 cases, you and I made the wine. It's called Masciana's Best. Very creative name.
Thank you.
Now we're sitting on this 30,000 cases, even though we're not even talking about this.
Wait, Paul. The first thing you got to do if you're going to plant 10 acres in Napa, you've got a huge amount of money invested. The first thing you're going to do
$2 million.
is you're going to go to other wineries and try to get them to buy your grapes before you make your own wine.
I see.
You're gonna try and build some sort of a buzz about this vineyard, if there is a buzz to be had, so that you're not putting out the money to make those wines. First of all, you're not going to get to 30,000 cases for 5 or 6 years.
That's true, right?
Okay, I mean, so
we've waited 5 years, 6 years. We've tied up $2 million. That was really the point I was trying to get to.
Well, yeah, but then
$2 million.
Don't forget, we also had to take care of the vineyard for 5 years without making any money. You forgot about that.
This is getting very expensive for you.
You kidding? Yeah. Well, I got money to burn.
I'm already out. I signed the separation paper.
Yeah.
So you've spent $2 million, actual fixed costs. Now we've got to tend to the vineyard. You usually hire an outside vineyard manager, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, you have to. You can't afford a full-time.
So you go to Napa or you go to whatever the consortium and you say, listen, I need a guy to look at this, and he comes around, checks the vineyard, whatever. You also got to decide whether or not this is a biodynamic or organic vineyard.
Well, if you're planting it from scratch, then I definitely recommend you go organic. Absolutely, without question.
These days, right?
Oh, yeah. No, you'd be stupid not to, because you save a lot of money in the long run.
And these numbers could be inflated now because organic vineyards are more expensive to maintain.
They're more expensive to start. They're less expensive to maintain. Okay, they cost a lot of money to get started, and you've got to have all these little
certifications.
Well, not the certifications are one thing, but you got to have all these little colonies of pests to kill the bad pests and grasses to grow that kill that smother the bad stuff. And once you get that established, then when you start using no pesticides or herbicides, those things are really expensive.
Yeah,
that's where the money really rolls up in vineyard management, is when you're using chemicals. But if you've got your little society all you're doing is planting bugs, and planting grass. And so that's going to save you a lot of money, but getting there costs more money.
Yeah, for sure. So we actually spent more money.
Right.
And we're shopping we could shop the grapes. Let's pretend we're not doing that yet. We're gonna actually pick them, take them to our friend's vineyard since we befriended the guy and he has extra space because he's not making any money.
And you're gonna need it.
and so we're gonna crush over there, and you rent that space, right? So you got money into renting this space and the storage of it all. This is Napa, so chances are we're gonna age something in oak. You can buy a new French oak barrel for what, about $1,200? Mm-hmm. And they're worth what, 60 gallons?
No.
66 gallons for oak barrel.
220 liters.
Divided by
they're
4.
60 gallons. Yeah, they're 60 gallons.
So they're $1,200.
Yeah.
For that. So 30,000 cases is 2.2 gallons, so it's 66,000 gallons, right? Approximately
that
a little
assumes
more,
you put them all in new oak, and you put them in oak at all,
Well, but we're in Napa, man.
Well, yeah, I know, but you don't have to put everything into oak. Okay. Number one, you could put them in stainless steel and put oak staves in the stainless steel.
You're not helping my argument here about how much it's expensive.
We're already at $2 million. You haven't made a dime, okay? So let's start with that.
So
I'm trying to save your money.
Put half of it in oak, and oak barrel's only good for what, for any influence over the wine. It's only good for a couple of years, and then you sell the barrel for
no. Then you have a barrel maker come in and shave it, and you've got a new bunch of oak to play with.
Okay, so that costs money.
No, they do it for free.
All right, so we bought the barrels. Let's just pretend we're going to put all of it in new oak. Because we're egotistical and we want to make we think the best wine in Napa Valley, compete with all the famous boutique brands, and so we have now about 70,000 gallons of juice, and that's going to be 1,000 barrels, right? Yeah, 1,000 barrels.
Yeah, at least
1,000 barrels is $1.2 million.
Yeah.
In fact, do you remember when Molly Hill at Sequoia Grove says we just went through the whole revamp, and the budget for the barrels was $1 million. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now we're at $3 million minimum.
And how much money have you made? How are you living, by the way?
And we're living in the back of this trailer.
I was going to say, how's the RV doing?
I guess the bottom line to all this is just is very, very expensive, and people. Now I'm going to make this comparison. We went through that exercise briefly just to show how to get started and forget all the decision making you have to make along the way and all the time and energy it takes. All this conversation would have taken us 5 or 7 years just to get to the point we're talking about. Right. So that's a minimum amount of time. Versus people in this industry now that are going to Europe, they're buying from these huge co-ops, a 50,000 gallon bladder. It's €1 a liter for the juice. Right. Trucking it into, boating it into New Jersey, driving it up to New York, bottling it under a bunch of different brands, and it seeps into the logistical network of the wine business. This is the part I want that you and I should talk about a little bit here. The way wine is distributed in America is very time-consuming, license-ridden, and expensive. And almost no one does it completely above board. Almost nobody. In fact, probably nobody. In other words, that they follow the 3-tier process into Illinois, New Jersey, New York, whatever it is, or they follow the winery direct process into the states you can do, and they follow the retail process into the states you can't do. Mm-hmm. Notwithstanding the idea that Tennessee just passed a law that seems to be trickling down into into a lot of states saying, we'll allow retailers to start shipping here because we don't want to bother with the lawsuit.
Right.
That's happening now, right?
Right.
So we haven't even gotten to all that, but the point of that is, even speaking with a very famous venture capitalist who's got a TV show, he says, what I see is it's a logistical play. So wine, the conversation you and I just had was about this idea, this ethereal experience to make my wine like my cousin up in the valley who's going to make his first case of wine out of these grapes he's grown. That experience now is completely gone because what's happening in the business is they want to flood the distribution channel with as much as they can to get the logistical prices down so that it gets into the consumer's hand, which is the direction of the wine business. Unfortunately, it's not with quality first.
Well, that's right.
Right? That's what's happening.
Exactly. And that's the issue right there. I mean, you're not talking about windshield wipers.
No, you're not.
So you get a pair of windshield wipers, you put them on your car, it works. You're happy.
Right.
But the next time you go get the same windshield wiper, it works. You're happy. That doesn't work with wine.
Doesn't work with wine.
Okay.
Well, and this is kind of interesting to me. And you actually look for juice samples. You solicit all the friends in your business after all these years for stuff that they have that they could that you'd like to bottle for your brand. And once in a while you find some really good stuff and you put it out there.
Right.
You bring it to me quite often. And when you bring me that stuff, sometimes it's like, what are these people thinking? Because it's out there, it's just not very good. And some of the stuff's really good. And you learn that they don't know anything about business. And they don't know anything about making wine.
Yeah,
and that too.
I mean, I taste a lot of wines, and I go, I can taste some promise in this. All you had to do was add this and that and the other thing. And I had one guy that I was going to bring you this Zinfandel. It was great Zin. It was a great price. And I said, look, I like this wine. It's a great price, but we need to do this and this and this to it. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, you guys got 12,000 gallons of this wine. I don't want to do that. Well, we could make a deal here. Now, it's too much work. I got too many people that want it. It's still for sale.
Well, we've run across that a few times. So the consumer, I mean, and I'm going to move forward here. The consumer, unless they find a stable source of stuff they trust, has almost little chance.
They have no chance.
To just
little chance. Little chance means they have a chance.
Yeah, right. No chance. To understand and to see, and now that's the branding part, right? We go, oh, I like cake bread. Oh, I like Chateau Montelena. Oh, I like Nuit Saint Georges from Louis Jadot. Those are the things I like. Those are what I'm going to buy, right? Which is fine. You probably can get a consistent source of quality and expectation in that. But to venture out of that, and you go to the wine shop and you look at that wall of all these $20 Cabernets, what do you have to work with? $40 Cabernet.
Thank you.
What do you have to work with?
Nothing. Zero. You got absolutely nothing. I mean, that's the first thing I used to tell my students. Well, where can I get the best wine for the cheapest price? I said, you know something? You're going to pay more for that cheap wine because you're going to have to buy 2 or 3 bottles before you get a good one. That's number one. The first thing you want to do is find somebody who sells you wine that knows you and your palate and can solve your problem of what to drink and at a price that you can afford. Now, you may pay more for that specific bottle of wine there than somewhere else, but anybody will take it back, as a Wine of the Month Club does, without question. And 2, at least now we've got a dialogue going,
So they and I've noticed now that the wine rack at Ralph's is the same as Vaughn's and the same as Stater Brothers.
Right.
And it seems to me that the wine shelf has gone the way of toothpaste and salad dressing.
Right.
Right? So they almost start looking the same.
Some of it actually tastes like salad dressing. But that's a personal observation.
Yeah,
I know, that's not
that
for
the
print.
consumer now is looking at the same plate. And so what would you recommend to the consumer that's taking your class today? Let's say you start teaching again, and they're like, I want the cheapest wine I can find, which good, go to Groupon and be disappointed. But I want the cheapest, best value I can find. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to find. You go to a retail store and talk to somebody and try to get a rapport with them and tell them what you're looking for or what price you want to spend, and then buy whatever they recommend. And if you like it, then you go back there. And if you don't like it, then you go somewere else.
And now, wouldn't it be a good idea to join the Wine of the Month Club?
No, not at all. No, I don't know why. You hired you. Were you setting me up for that?
Yeah,
of course you were.
So
the fact that the Wine of the Month Club has been around for almost 50 years, I think, says something about the wines, that are offered to the members, and quite honestly, some of them just absolutely slay me. I can't believe you're getting some of this stuff at those prices.
Well, the value, but the point of that is what you're just telling these people. Find somebody that tastes the wines for you, that knows what's on the shelf, so to speak. This is the virtual shelf. You go in the warehouse here, you'll see our shelf. We've tasted it all. We know what it tastes like.
Right.
We know how it compares to the stuff that's on the shelf. And we know the value, and you see yourself. Besides, not only that, some of the incredible deals we find from some very well-known makers, both import and domestic, that just have a situation that they need to solve.
Right.
Which is like that Riesling from the German Riesling we did, which you just couldn't believe.
Oh God,
I
couldn't get enough of that
together,
wine.
right?
You know, I mean, it really annoys me when you run out of wine and then I can't get any
Yeah,
more.
right. Well, that's a problem.
You know?
So tell me about this restaurant. We were talking about, and I was in New York a few weeks ago, and I went to the address 5 East 55th Avenue. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that is the location of Le Pavillon in the 40s and 50s of what would have set the definition of haute cuisine in America, and then as cuisine has changed and California cuisine has come aboard over the last 20, 40 years, 50 years. When you start a restaurant like the one that you're starting with, somebody you're thinking about,
I'm not starting it. I'm just I would just in essence be the consulting executive chef.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the food pairings and you're saying, okay, if we're gonna do this. I don't know if it's Italian. Is it Italian?
I want to do Italian small plates, yeah.
Okay.
Which nobody's done, probably for good reason, but I'll find out.
No, they're around. Like Union is a small plate.
Yeah.
Pasadena, very good. What's his name? Was started it Bruce somebody. But when you're going to tell the guy about the wines, when you're pairing these foods, what are you going to look at when it comes to the small plate Italian and the wines that you're going to recommend to go with it? What are you going to look for?
Well, something to complement the food, obviously.
I know, but in what way? Weight, spice, flavors?
Well, all those things have to come into play, you know. And the first question you always ask the customer is, "What do you like?"
As a what? As the wine guy?
Yes.
As a wine steward?
Yeah. What are you drinking? What do you like? You know, the problem with a lot of sommeliers is they want to impress the customer with how much they know about wine, which doesn't mean a damn thing to anybody. You know,
right, that's right. You're right.
You know, what the important thing is, what does that person like, and then are they adventurous? Well, I drink Chardonnay. Well, okay. Have you ever tried Vermentino? Vermin what? Isn't that a rat? No, Vermentino. You know, exactly. So, you know, you got to sort of get a sense of who your customer is and how far you can push them. You know, when I was a wine director, the first wine director for Bristol Farms 30 years ago, I had people coming in that had never bought wine. They didn't drink wine, but because they had to wait in line in front of the wine section, they'd look around.
Yeah.
And then I'd say, you got a question? No, I don't really drink wine, but, you know, they got nothing else to do, so we talk, you know.
Right.
Well, some of those people ended up putting, you know, cellars in their houses.
Okay.
You know?
Thanks to Big Ed. Why don't you hang around here for a little bit? Tell me what that's.
Well, those are different times. You know?
But the point I'm trying to make is like like a Union, Bruce Kalman, that's the guy's name. The small plate foods and the curator of that list, the steward of the sommelier, when I call him or her, has done a really good job of finding wines that would pair with those foods. And I think the evolution of cuisine in America has, you know, parallels. Wine is an important part of that growth and that in cuisine pairing. And now California doesn't have indigenous grapes to work with, but the foods I think are new, and the pairings can be new, the feeling can be new. The whole idea of pairing wines and food in the California cuisine is a new thing, right? You go to Umbria and you're going to get Umbrian food and you're going to get Umbrian wine, right? We don't have that luxury or that advantage or disadvantage, maybe as it is in California. So I think, for instance, I'll give you an example. We went to dinner the other night, clearly an Italian restaurant. Everybody bought a bottle of wine. I brought a Super Tuscan. My friend brought a Brunello. And then two guys brought 2 Napa Cabs. So which do you think paired better with the food, just on the cover, the cursory?
Well, it depends on. Well, obviously, if you're going to drink Italian food or eat Italian food, you're going to drink Italian wine. It's going to pair better. But then again, you know, beefsteak alla Fiorentino, Napa Cab could work beautifully.
It could, but they didn't have beefsteak the Florentine.
Okay, but if they're doing stuff with tomato sauces and they're doing.
And by the way, if you tell that to the Florentine, let's see, Bordelaise is a Bordelais guy. A Burgundy,
Firenze.
Firenze, yeah. If you tell one that to that guy, he's going to shoot you for putting.
If he's
Napa
got a
Cab.
gun, he probably would. But fortunately, they don't carry guns.
Okay.
They carry knives, but that's another story. Anyway, again, though, it's personal preference too. You know, I mean, I'd prefer, of course, a Barolo or a Barbaresco or a Super Tuscan, depending on what it is. Don't forget, a lot of those Super Tuscans have Cabernet in them too.
That's true. But
you know,
different. But I think it's like for instance at Union, and that's why I'm trying to get you to tell me, what are you going to tell the restaurant owner about their wine list when you make this cuisine up? That's what I'm trying to get to. I've had friends text me pictures of them sitting at Union in Pasadena, with a bottle of Duckhorn Merlot, and that's like not even giving the idea of pairing indigenous foods with indigenous wine.
Well, I've always said when because I get that question a lot in classes, I said, look, good food, good wine goes with good food. Where it comes from is kind of secondary. The fact is, I mean, Duckhorn Merlot is a great Merlot. I mean, it is really a great bottle.
It is.
Wine. So if you were having it with, a veal dish or a pasta dish that's Italian, it would probably do fine. Okay. Would something else do better? Most likely. But then when you want to get into the fine points, you're really not talking about the gross ingredients like the tomato or the fish. You're talking about the seasoning. You're talking about, is there mint in this? Is there cinnamon in this? Is there clove in this? Now you start to, look for those little, snippets of things. And that gets to be very, very arduous. Because isn't
that one of the big questions you get? Because that's what I'm trying to get to. See, I'm trying to lead you down this path. You're not going there.
No, I'm not.
So,
but keep trying.
The idea. So here we have this whole culture of people, and like my friend the venture capital says, and I'll tell you who it is, Kevin O'Leary, okay, from the Shark Tank.
Yeah, I know.
And he says, this logistical play is going on. It's just how much wine can you put into the system? Is that not the experience that the consumer wants? You've got websites that are saying, answer a few questions like, do you drink black coffee and do you salt your food? And they're going to pair wines for you.
Oh God, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life.
Exactly, it's silly, right?
If you put cream in your coffee, you like cream cherry.
And the reason that's silly is what you just said. Because it doesn't have cloves, cinnamon, spice. Is it salted? Is it not salted? Is it using Himalayan, sea salt? No, I'm joking. But the point is, you can ask broad stroke questions like, do you drink black coffee? But there's just, even that question alone has got a million different variations.
It doesn't
you
mean
can't
anything.
possibly pair food, right?
It doesn't mean anything.
But so I'm trying to get to this point where the consumer now, with this logistical play going on, with this crap wine coming, with Groupon saying I'll give you 15 wines for $45 and a free corkscrew, that the consumer has to be confused and bewildered. And along comes Ed Masciana, who's the executive chef now at a restaurant, a consulting chef, and he's pairing the foods with the wine so people can educate themselves on this idea of the ethereal experience, the blending of food and cuisine, to say, hey, I get that. I understand this, right?
Well, it's not that hard to do. I mean, I've had people drink wine and said, I don't like it. And they said, okay, eat this. Now drink the wine. Oh, wow. How'd that happen?
There you go. That's exactly right.
But they both got to be good. You can't have a great dish and a bad bottle of wine, or vice versa.
So I think that based on the way the club has been moving, you've seen this now, right? You saw that in 1972 we had the classic series. Then at some point my dad felt like he needed to up the ante on a little bit, so he started the limited series.
Right.
The premise of the limited series at the time was it was limited availability because the wines were rarer, right? Then at some point the market more people came in the marketplace. I saw this gap in our pricing, and that it needed a club that was around $35 at the time, or $30. So we started the Vintner series. So these are price sensitive clubs, right? It has nothing to do with the wines necessarily, except that the classic series ends up with really good valued wines, but they're not as complex, as interesting as maybe the Vintners and so on to the limited. But now guess what's happened? You already know this. We started a Bordeaux club. We started a Napa club. We started a Rosé club. We started a varietally sensitive club called Pinot Noir. So now the consumer, I think, and those clubs are growing, are starting to think,
no, I see that.
I want more education. I want more experience. I want to understand this better. I want to know what goes with what the foods are. You know how people call me with your recipes and tell us that was great, or they say you forgot it. You told us that we needed a half a teaspoon of salt, but it's not in the menu.
that happened. Believe me.
Which means they're reading it though.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're trying to make the foods that go around it. Why do you think Blue Plate? What's the name of the Blue Plate special? No,
the people that went out of business.
Yeah, the guys that are selling food in the thing, they have clubs. These guys have clubs. So I think the consumer, notwithstanding trying to start their own winery, is trying to understand this again. In other words, going back to the days of Les Amis de Vin, going back to the days of the 70s when California wine hit the map, and starting to understand a little bit more, garner the experience of a good bottle of wine, maybe with a good meal, and talk about it.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. But again, I go back to my original statement. They're still looking for quick answers. And the first thing I tell them is there aren't quick answers.
There are no quick answers.
You know, they had a great steak with a great bottle of Cabernet. Okay, then all I want to do is eat steak and drink Cabernet. No, you really don't, you know. I mean, here, try Vermentino, try Vernaccia, try Tempranillo, you know, and try it with chicken, try it with veal, try a red wine with fish, you know. I mean,
well, that's a good point. So to really move the needle on your personal appreciation for wine is to break out of the mold that you're in. Don't buy the same thing you bought last time. Seek advice from a knowledgeable person, either it's your club that you belong to or your local wine shop, and ask the opinion of that person.
Mm-hmm.
The character profile, the food profile it should go with, and try it. And then you'll learn something. You may learn you don't like it, but you'll learn something.
Well, yeah, but you know, I gave a lot of thought to this, and the fact is, when you look at all the wines that we have featured over the years, there's a level of quality that's pretty much accepted by anybody in the wine business. Okay?
Right.
Now, some people may not like that wine, but that doesn't mean that that quality level hasn't been achieved. What it means is that person hasn't gotten there yet. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who only drank, you know, one wine, and you have them taste another wine and go, well, I don't know, and then you taste it again, or a couple of months later they try it again and go, gee, this is pretty good, you know. So there's an education level of their palate. And you know, I had a friend of mine in Wisconsin, one of my closest friends, when I was talking to him about the Wine of the Month Club. He said, "Well, you should start a wine club where you tailor the wine to fit their taste." I said, "But what if their taste isn't any good?" Then what do I do? Yeah, I'm gonna try to find wines that aren't good just to suit their taste. No, you have a level of quality that you have to reach. You know, and sure, there's going to be you know, ups and downs, and there are going to be people that disagree with you, but it's not that, you know, it's more precise than most people give it credit for.
No, I think you're right. There are things that you and I have disagreed on characters of wine.
Absolutely.
But we've agreed that the level of quality was there.
Without question.
You know, that we're pretty good at, but then we decide whether or not we
Well, then it becomes a personal preference. I mean, that's why I stopped judging at all the fairs. I would judge at every fair, LA County, Los Angeles, San Diego, you know, Riverside. I got tired of the judges. I mean, these people would rate a wine low because they didn't like it. I said, there's nothing wrong with this wine.
Yeah, it's just the character.
You know, I mean, and when I was in charge of the Long Beach Grand Prix tasting, because a very close friend of mine who was in charge, Dan Berger, who was also the head of the did the LA Times wine column.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it. He said, "Would you do it?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do it," but then they have to go by my rules.
Oh, good, yeah.
You know,
Ed Masciana rules.
That's what they were, and he goes, "Oh my God," you know.
He was like, "Forget it, you're off the case."
No, he says, "Okay, what are the rules?" I said, "The rules are, every wine that's submitted comes with a paragraph written by the winemaker as to what he was trying to achieve. And when we taste those wines with the judges, they will rate the wine on whether the winemaker achieved his goal, not whether they liked it or not." Okay?
That's an interesting thing.
And let me tell you, the wineries loved it.
Yeah,
they loved it. The judges didn't like it because now they don't have an opinion other than the fact that they could say, well, you wanted to make a big oaky monster that I couldn't stand, but you made a big oaky monster.
That's right. That's what we wanted.
Yeah, okay. And so you know,
win.
Well, exactly. You know.
All right, well, we'll finish on this thought. There seems to be a proliferation of the rating game now.
Oh,
I mean, you've always hated the rating game.
Always.
And for that same premise that you just spoke about, it was almost the same premise of why you would. But now it's just like, I mean, I had my staff go through, because I want to submit. I wanted to. I don't want to anymore. I wanted to submit some of the wines that we found that are not submitted.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't submit.
Right.
So I had my staff go through and look for wine contests or, you know, evaluations throughout the country. It's like 2 miles long, this list.
Oh yeah, no,
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And then if you look close enough at the ratings of some of the wines you see online, you'll see, the Stanislaus, Farmers Association wine tasting event. And that's what you now. Everybody's got 90s and 95s, and it's a question that we get all the time at the Wine of the Month Club, and that is, you and I rate wines in the 90s, but that's because we've already weeded out the 70s and 80s, and now we have a different scale to work with because we're now comparing them amongst their peers, as price peers, rather than the customer says, well, the Spectator didn't give this a 90. Like, well, we're not the Spectator. We're actually rating this wine against its competitors on the same playing field. Not just submitted through through a bunch of tasters. It's the same people. You and I are the only ones tasting these wines. But has your opinion changed of these? This?
Well, I think what's happened, and for me, it's all for the better. Is I don't think they mean as much as they used to, because social media has kind of taken over the promotion of wines that some people like, and then they spit it out, and they don't really care if some old guy in New York likes it anymore. They really don't.
They don't. In fact, that's the number one comment that we get at their tastings here at the Wine of the Month Club. I bought this case of wine and it was rated 95, and I didn't like it. Well, I get that all the time.
Everybody gets that,
and I think it goes back to what you're saying, which is, you have to find the things you like. You have to taste a lot to do it. You don't rely on those scores. Rely on your own palate at a restaurant or wherever you go. Try new things. Test new things. Just, trying to buy crap.
And the members of the Wine of the Month Club trust yours, and
that's it.
Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. But I would guarantee you, if you talk to some members, they would say, well, there were some wines I didn't like, 2 years ago or 3 years ago that now I like more.
I'll finish with this. Did you see a Listern Cabernet on sale that we just put on for $6.99 or some ridiculously low number?
No, I didn't see that. I didn't get it.
We had a bunch of overstock because when I bought the wine, I was required to buy a bunch more than I knew I could sell, much like a winery produce more than they can sell. And so it just sat here for about a year and a half, 2 years. It's a Languedoc Cabernet.
Okay.
The pedigree of it's not so extraordinary, but the wine was great when we bought it. You won't believe it now. I have never seen a wine age so gracefully, and particularly from a region that's not known for that, right? This is like a phenomenal bottle of wine. So if people called me and said, Cabernet 6.99 is really any good, I said, you won't believe it. I go, you won't believe. I've never seen a transformation for a wine in such a short amount of time. And maybe because it is Languedoc Cabernet, it's not going to live 10 years, but...
Well, yeah, but the Languedoc today is not the Languedoc of 30 years ago.
I understand, but the last 24 months of this wine have been extraordinary. Anyway, Ed, you and I can talk forever on wine.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming today and
always
hashing out
fun,
some
Paul.
of the things. And I'm going to be bringing Dad in again as soon as he gets back on his feet, and we'll hash over some of those old days as well.
Oh, terrific.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to be back here again.
Au revoir, ambiento.
Cheers. Gay nuts.
Good nuts. Thank you. Excellent.